Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Lowitzo. This is week 8 of ALEC 341. That's exciting, right? Middle of the semester, dead middle of the semester, week 8 out of 16. Hopefully, you are working through things with your 2 podcast interviewees. I hope at this point you've met with them initially. You have your questions ready to go as we've been working on. I know some of you have even recorded audio, so come to class this week ready to let us listen to your podcasts that you have so far, your rough audio. Excited to see how that's going. We're going to move into learning how to use Adobe Audition for editing. So I'm posting some tutorials to it in our week 8 module in Canvas. So make sure you go to those tutorials, watch some of the very beginning ones about how the interface works. We're also going to use class time to work on recording your intro, or at least a draft intro, and playing around with how you edit it and how you add music. Or if you already have interview audio recorded with your scientist, we can play around with that in class as well. But start pushing yourself to dig into Audition to learn how to edit this week. You also need to read Science for All Americans, Chapter 5, about the living environment. So pretty cool chapter. Has a lot to do with humans, human impacts, and a couple of different things that we'll talk about. Then you'll have your online activity number 7 due Tuesday, March 6th at midnight. If you still do not have your 2 interviews worked out for your 2 podcasts, if you still need someone to interview, if you haven't heard back from someone, what have you, if you're stuck, make sure you set up time with me either in class to work that out or outside of class. But you really, hopefully, you should have the 2 people secured and be moving forward at this point. All right, so chapter 5, living environment. So we're done with the podcasting book. We're moving back to our science literacy piece of this class. They're kind of interwoven back and forth together. So thanks for sticking with it. This chapter is pretty interesting. It helps us again reconnect with Project 2061 and those benchmarks that we hope all Americans know about science. So this chapter talks about the diversity of life. And so what does that mean? That means we're all interconnected in a lot of different ways at the cellular level, at the broader level. This is sort of the mindset scientists have about life and how it works together. Heredity, hopefully you remember learning some of this stuff back in high school and middle school, maybe even some beginning science courses. It's this notion that life is composed of cells. We are human beings full of tissue, bone, water, muscles, organs, but we're made out of cells at the most cellular level of life. And it's all connected. It all depends on one another. The water, the plants, the animals, the humans, we're all connected in this broader physical way, but we're all also mostly made up of cells. So it talks about that in this benchmark as well. And then it talks about the flow of energy and matter. So you might remember things about kinetic energy or being still, all of those things about how energy and motion are transferred from being to being, through a being. All of that stuff is in this chapter. And then it moves into the evolution of life. So most scientists take a scientific view that life does evolve, that we might develop adaptations over time due to our physical responses to climate change, that we might develop adaptations due to the responses of our water quality, due to the responses of genetically modified organisms and the things that are being changed about our food. We have a lot of allergies in children and things these days. So how have we evolved to all of a sudden have all of these allergies, and what types of changes need to be made in our food to adapt and grow and evolve with those types of topics? The evolution is kind of a big deal when it comes to agriculture and the environment, right? So think about all the ways that evolution is connected to plants, animals, water, people. Here are some really sort of basic things that I hope you remember or know about when it comes to the living environment. The chapter talks about heredity. Hopefully you remember the Punnett squares and Gregor Mendel and his peas and how he manipulated the genes at the cellular level to change the colors of the peas, the types of peas, those sorts of things are what's being done for genetically modified organisms, right? They're taking a piece of that DNA at the gene level, the cellular level, and they're inserting it into other types of DNA to get certain qualities to come out of those plants. And then, you might remember the examples of your parents have a different eye color than you. How did yours turn out? So dominant and recessive genes when it comes to heredity, right? The whole, can you roll your tongue? Can you not roll your tongue? Are your earlobes attached? Are they not attached? All of those sort of basic genetic things. We hope that most Americans know that stuff and understand how heredity works in the scientific view. And then again, at the cellular level, you might remember mitosis and meiosis, right? So mitosis was when you ended up with the two diploid cells that were just two. And then meiosis, you ended up with the four different cells out of the cell splitting multiple times. So these are just basic science reminders from things we've learned before in middle and high school that we do hope people continue to remember. And these are the things that help us talk to our scientists. These are not necessarily big data, but you can collect big data about genes. You can collect big data about GMOs. You can collect big data about the heredity of things. Heredity can almost become data that we're looking at large databases of. How cells are changing and dividing and moving can almost become big data these days, right? Then it moves into, so from the cellular level and the heredity level to the bigger picture of how the living environment is connected, how it's all connected, the waters, the plants, the trees, the animals, how it all uses similar nutrients, similar air, similar water. Remember the food web here on the right. It's kind of a blurry, yucky picture, but we get energy from the sun, and then we transfer energy to each other, and then we get energy from our plants and our animals that we consume. And it's just this really big interconnected food web. So great things to keep in mind as you talk to scientists, as you conduct these interviews, as you develop content for middle grade school audiences, is these basic concepts about the living environment. Some reminders on the podcasting side of things for your podcasting workflow. Just keep an eye on how you're doing it. What equipment are you using? Are you using your phone with an app, a splitter, and the microphones? Are you using an iPad with GarageBand? Are you recording it directly to Audition on your computer? Keep an eye on all of that stuff. Make sure you're testing your sound before you record. So don't just start the interview with the person and hope that the sound is doing just fine. Maybe do a test run with them, have them say a couple things, test, 1, 2, 3, have them talk about what a great day it is outside today, then pull everything out and listen to it to make sure it recorded okay. Always export your audio from the iPads before you check them back in, because someone most likely will come along and delete yours before you get it off the iPad. So always take your audio, video, photos, selfie with the scientist, all of your media off the iPads, get them onto your computer. You might save them on your computer itself. So the desktop, the documents, wherever you're saving your multimedia. And then you might also back up those files in Box in the cloud, because if your computer has a problem, it freezes up on you, it loses everything. You at least have those raw backup files in the cloud in Box that you can get to if you need to. You can edit in GarageBand on the iPads if you really wanted to. I don't think anybody wants to keep them checked out or edit with your fingers. So you might really consider moving all your audio into Adobe Audition, watching the tutorials this week, coming to class and starting to play around with it. The other type of editing program that is free that quite a few people use is called Audacity. So if you ever end up in an internship or a job where you don't have free access to Adobe Audition, Audacity is a free download from the internet that can do pretty much all the same stuff Adobe Audition can do. So there's a tip for you. You submitted your intros and outros, so just a few reminders about those. You have your interview footage or your interview audio recorded. Now you're going to work on editing that and then adding your intros and outros. So we're all in class this week going to agree on a track of music that we all like, that we want to use to have our podcasts have a similar brand and sound at the beginning of them. So we'll put that somewhere in a box folder where everybody can have access to it. So make sure you use that audio clip that we agree on in class. Remember, your script for your intro is a little bit customizable. You'll have that beginning bit about streaming science and science literacy, but then it'll be about you and introducing your scientist and person and topic and moving into that interview. You can also include narration throughout if you want to describe their office, describe why you chose the topic, describe what you thought was the most fascinating thing they said in the entire interview. You'll need to record that stuff probably about the same time you record your intros and outros to put on there. And then your outro, hopefully, is always to recommend the listener continue to follow us for future podcasts, videos, photo essays on streamingscience.com. All right, you have an assignment due this week, online activity number 7, due Tuesday, March 6th, midnight. It has some questions in it about chapter 5 and what it means to you. Something that I'm really prompting you to think about is the evolution piece of the chapter, and sort of this idea of scientists think about evolution, but they also might have a strong faith, culture, belief system, and how do things like teaching, learning, communicating evolution interplay with our faith, our culture, our beliefs? How does all of that fit together? Personally, I've had teachers tell me they do not want to run some of the programming I've created in the past with Purdue Zip Trips. When we had a electronic field trip called We Are All Animals, it was a lot about evolution and how animals change and adapt. And she was teaching in a smaller private school, and she said she wasn't going to use our programming because she didn't believe in evolution, didn't want her children to learn about it. And so she was teaching creationism and things in her schools. So as a up and coming science communicator, I want you to think about that. Where are your ideals and perceptions and thoughts about evolution? And then where are they about faith and creationism and those types of things? And how will you blend all of that together when you go out and you talk to scientists and you talk to producers and you talk to people of different backgrounds and do that type of work when it comes to communicating about the living environment? So I look forward to your responses to that activity. I will see you in class this week to work on our intro, outro music and digging into audition. And I hope everybody has a great week 8.